the time out of your schedule to come and participate, so we truly appreciate you being here. And I also noticed on the list that there were quite a few names that I recognized from this weekend. We just had a community build for our playground. Do you want to just, if you were there, you want to just raise your hand real quick?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that was nice to see you again. So we're going to get started, and we're really excited about this program. And Andy, you can take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks, Teresa. How's everybody doing? Good. We've got a couple vacant spots up here. I'm going to do my best to talk. I'll probably lose my voice by 7 though, so if you have a hard time hearing, just let me know and I'll grab the microphone. So as Teresa said, Andy Northrup from Michigan State University Extension. I'm here to present the results of this program. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and looks like we got a good group, almost 60, 70 people. So we've got folks here from other counties across the state, we've got folks here from Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and so, of course we've got a lot of folks from the city of St. Clair too. So we'll dive in here. But before we do that, I just want to let everybody know, when you think of MSU Extension, probably the first thing that comes to people's mind is that we just do 4-H. There we go. That's way better. Let's hope that stays off and we don't get too hot. But we also do a lot of other things, and a few people in the room here probably know what some of those other things, but we're involved with a lot of food systems, government, conflict training, leadership, natural resource management, but we also are starting to dive into tourism development, which is not really something that's made its way in Extension until the last few years. And one of the things that we are doing extensively is this program called FIT. It's an acronym for First Impressions. I myself am based in Port Huron. I'm in the St. Clair County office. I work statewide and do a number of tourism development related programs. Just to let everybody know, we are open to all. That's how MSU Extension operates. So I have a lot of data to share tonight with all of you, so I promise you won't get bored. I haven't had anybody throw tomatoes at me yet when I've done this and walk out, but that is how the evening's going to look. So I'm going to give a pretty solid overview of what the First Impressions Tourism Assessment Program is, and then we're going to dive right into the findings. Your community tonight's pretty unique in the sense that you're the first community downstate, Lower Peninsula, Michigan to have a youth assessment. We have one other community in the Upper Peninsula that did a youth assessment last year, Houghton Hancock. So you not only had adults come to your community as outside visitors, but you had a group of youth come as well, led by an adult. So you have the perspective of quite a few people. Typically the program is a 5-person assessment team. In this case, you have the perspectives of almost 11, maybe 12 if I'm doing the right math. So we're going to go through the adult findings first. We'll take a break and you can get some snacks that the city has provided, and then we'll come back and we'll hear about the youth findings, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. We'll plan to be here a full 2 hours. We'll try not to keep you over, just out of respect for your time. And then we will hear from the City of St. Clair as to what they intend to do next as a result of this program and some upcoming new developments that they have shortly after tonight. So I'm going to dive right in. Before we get really going, I just want to recognize a couple sponsors here tonight. St. Clair Chamber of Commerce and then the City of St. Clair have sponsored this evening with the food and so forth. So kudos to them. And then equally important is the I-69 Thumb Region Prosperity Region 6. This is a 7-county partnership established under the previous Governor Snyder. This Prosperity Region is funding this program. They've done several across the thumb. There is a cost to it. The cost was covered by the Prosperity Region to your benefit. So they just want to give them recognition. I don't believe anybody's here from that group tonight, but oh yes, Jeff Donaldson, Dan Casey's a part of that. I'm on one of the steering committees as well. It's a pretty large group. So, right, I'm going to give an overview of First Impressions. So this program, First Impressions, is done globally, well, including Canada. So just the United States and Canada. And I show this map, excuse me, to give you an indication of the magnitude of this type of program before I describe it. And as you can see, Wisconsin is covered in red dots, and you can see that Ontario is covered in red dots. And all those red dots are every time that the program's been done since the 90s, and you'll notice that Michigan has only 2 red dots. And those 2 red dots are basically when I first piloted the program in 2016. So what we're working on is to plug in Michigan and those red dots. And the program itself has modified over the years based on needs of communities. It's been applied to county fairs. It's been applied in Main Street programs, business corridors, tourism. It's also been applied to youth and emerging leader programs. So I'm just giving you a background on that to give you a general idea of this concept of assessing communities through the eyes of an outside visitor or groups of visitors. Come on in. One chair up here, one back here. Couple over here. You bet. So what we've done at Michigan State University is we've rolled it out here about 4 years ago, 2016, and the focus of this program is basically tourism development. We started with the concept that the program would help shape tourism, but really what is happening is that we come in as tourists and we're helping shape community development through an outside visitor perspective. So that's a lot of wordage and verbiage. I'm not going to read it, but overall premise is that we identify strengths and weaknesses through the eyes of a first-time visitor. The program itself focuses on the first 3 bullet points. That's what we do as outside assessors. We come in as a team, we work, I'll give you a better overview of what the actual program is and how much time we spend in the community, but the premise is that we learn about assets and opportunities from first-time visitors, and then we work to strengthen existing cohort of leaders in the community. So before this program actually happens, we require that a community leadership team is formed. And so that community leadership team is here tonight. They're the folks that have put on this evening session. And then the program itself, we develop a list of what we call suggestions or action items that are certainly up to the community to decide if they want to do anything or do everything. The community leadership then is given sort of the go-ahead, if you will, when they're ready to follow the next 3 bullet points. And some of the communities that have done the program have done just that. Some take their time to digest the results. But overall, it's to improve the community well-being of life for residents first, visitors second, but each probably get hopefully enough attention, equal amount of attention. So let's try the microphone. Let's see. Oops. I'm terrible with these things. Is that working? It was working. I don't know what the trick is. I'm not going to let it stop me. Got any suggestions, let me know. So the overall premise, as I said, is to identify strengths and weaknesses through the eyes of a first-time visitor, but it's also designed to spawn local leadership. It's also designed to get residents active and engaged around things that they can easily wrap their head around. We also look to form the basis for future development as well. So I talked about a community leadership team. In order to apply and do this program, a community leadership team is required. So these are the folks that came together, drafted their application, and applied for the program in, I believe, mid-2018. So would those folks just stand up or raise their hand if they're in the room? Great. So when I talk about the community leadership team, that's who I'm talking about tonight. And they are, we leave the onus is on the community to self-identify. We don't have any requirements, although we strongly encourage private and public sector to come together for this type of program. So moving forward, I would like to give everybody an overview of how we got here tonight and where we are. So that community leadership team that just stood up, they formed a year ago sometime, and they applied for the FIT program. And then I held a kickoff meeting with them back in, oh gosh, I don't know, April maybe? January sometime, February? And we had an orientation, a team on one meeting in partnership with Metropolitan Planning for the county. And then we moved on to number 4, and a team of FIT visitors, assessors if you will, came into the city of St. Clair during the summertime. I'll be more exact in a few minutes. And here we are, or excuse me, then we moved to number 5. We had our own internal meetings, we summarized the results, we wrote reports, we huddled over the results, we crafted this PowerPoint, and then here we are at number 6, sharing the results. So that's the process. After tonight, I'll go home and get ready to present results at another community in a few weeks. And a written report will be has been given to the community leadership team, and they'll get all of this data and all of the raw data, and they'll decide what to do in number 8, and then about 9 months to a year from now, I'll circle back with the city of St. Clair to find out what's happened as a result of the program.
Excuse me, does the team know when these guests and visitors will be perusing our city?
We've already come.
Yes, I know, but did they know?
Did they know?
Yes.
They didn't know the date.
Okay.
No, good question. So we'll conduct follow-up and then, circle back. So I'd like to give you a better understanding of us plugging in those red dots. So we started in 2016 with a couple pilots. In 2017, we did 4 of these up pretty much the center of the thumb. By 2018, we thought we were just going to do 2. We ended up doing 6. I won't do that again. But you can see we were in Marine City and Cass City. Those are a little bit closer to home. We did do Marine City last year. We shared the results with Marine City last February, the coldest night of the year. Yeah. Thanks for coming out if you were there that night. The vortex was hitting us hard. And so 2019, we, Langsburg out in Shiawassee County, just north of Lansing there, the Black Star, and then St. Clair applied. And we're also doing 2 more up in the western UP and getting ready for more in 2020. So that just gives you an overview kind of where the state has, and the interest in the program has grown significantly. So your community will be an example going forward to share with others. So something to be proud of. So before we get into the results, some things to consider. This program's not a program to turn your town into the next Traverse City. I don't want to scare you. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're not here to say this is the silver bullet if you want to become the next Traverse City, although you have a lot of potential to be up there, I think. But this is merely a program to let you know what tourists / visitors / people think of your community. And from that, you can make the decisions on what you want from us, as well as input from your own residents and so forth. I probably don't need to tell your community this so much, but I'll say it anyway. Every community gets visitors. Believe it or not, a lot of communities that do this program believe they don't get any visitors. Every community gets visitors, whether they're just here for gas, groceries, a round of golf, maybe a quick swim in the rivers, plural. Every community gets visitors, if they're here for church or not. So that's how we kind of think about visiting and tourism in that sense. And so this is the perspective of assessors. There's 5 of us that came to the community, 5 adults, 6 youth. It's not criticism, but we will share negatives tonight. There's a lot of positives, but the reason communities do these programs is to hear the negatives. In your situation, a lot of communities like yours on beautiful rivers and so forth have prosperity on their side. We're not always fortunate to come to a community that has prosperity on its side, if you will. We often go into communities that look like they haven't had visitors for 20 years, right? But each community uses the results to their advantage. So if we end up sharing a lot of positives, which there are tonight, and a lot of negatives, the positives end up validating the direction you're already on, and the negatives just end up giving you more ideas to do, more ideas for the future, if you will. So I will answer questions at the end. There's probably going to be a lot of questions throughout this. If I stopped every time to answer questions, we won't get out of here until 10 o'clock probably. So at the end, there's probably a good 15 minutes. I will get to all of those for sure. My colleague Kathy's here tonight. She led the youth assessment, so she will be able to answer questions on that. We do have an evaluation at the end, so your input in that evaluation will help shape the direction of the program and make it better. We're always looking for you to tell us what we can do better.
Andy,
Matt.
will the slides be available for sharing after, or do we have to feverishly jot down left-handed notes?
Both. Yeah, so I can, yeah, of course, this is all public information. This is not private, right? We're a public entity, so we can share that if people want those. I asked that, and I'm sure the community itself would ask that those kind of be used in a productive way and not any other way. I know you don't have bad intentions. Nobody here has bad intentions, but. I think we're on TV tonight, so just so people know. So at the end, there's evaluation. So again, just help us provide some input if you have time, and we're not running too late, and share us your perspective on how we can make this program better, more robust. Every year it grows. So I'm going to jump into the results. Are there any pending questions? Anybody dying to know something that I didn't? Yeah.
Who are the assessors?
Oh, I'm going to tell you right now. We're getting right into it. We're going to go right into it. So, all right. So there it is. We don't come in looking like that, although we probably stand out. Believe me, we've been in some communities, again, that don't feel like they've had a visitor in 20 years, and they're kind of like, we were in one community riding bikes around, and the police thought, you know, they sort of, there was an elk there. They were kind of watching us, like, we're on mountain bikes. Anyway, I'll save stories for later. You had two, again, this is the adult version, okay? So there'll be different information on the youth that we'll hear from Kathy after the break. You had 2 males, 3 females, 2 of the group, so 5 in total, right? 2 of them were millennials, 2 of them were Generation X. So Generation X is basically my 40-year-olds to 50-year-olds, somewhere in there. And you had 1 baby boomer. All of us are, excuse me, MSU. Just so happens all of us worked for MSU. All of us were Michigan residents, and all of us hailed from different parts of the state. Some folks came from Lansing, some came from Metro Detroit, some came from Grand Rapids, and 1 person I think came from up around the Roscommon area. So we poll, I build these teams around the state. We poll them, I poll them if I can from as close, or excuse me, not as close, but within an hour to maybe 2 or 3 hours from here. All of us spent 12 to 24 hours in your community. 4/5 of us were first-time visitors in the city of St. Clair. Full disclosure, I do live in the county. I broke my own rule, but I'm the only person that really kind of coordinates this program, so I had to do it. So, so that's kind of the profile. All of us were Caucasian, except 1 individual had Middle Eastern origins. Why am I forgetting what that is? Yeah. And here's the heritage, right? Whoever said that, sorry. Already fumbling my words. But here's the catch. Some of us come with our spouses, some of us come with our partners, and some of us are married interracially, and some of us are have partners of the same sex. And so I share that with you because you're not just getting the perspective of Caucasian people. My wife in particular is of Asian descent, so when we descend on communities, we are multiracial, we are multicultural. My other colleague who uses these terms, she is a baby boomer lesbian with an African American partner. Those are her terms. She loves to let communities know that. She says that, and she stresses that so that the communities understand they're getting a diverse perspective of people and not just sort of, perhaps a one-sided perspective. So I share that. So you actually have the perspectives of more like 9 people rather than 5. So from the adults, and I say that so you understand that the responses are a little bit more robust. So we were here between May 13th to June 23rd. We set up a 5-week to 6-week window. 2 of us were here on a Saturday, 3 of us were here on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and a Friday. We come at all times during the week. So because that's what tourists do, that's what visitors do. So all 5 of us stayed overnight. 1 camped, 2 stayed in the hotels, and 2 stayed in bed and breakfasts in town, just to give you an idea.
How do you camp in St. Clair?
Right there. And there might be more than 1 camp spot, but that's where they stayed, right there. Right across the river. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, so good question. Excuse me, 4 visited alone and 1 came with their spouse. So, we do have requirements for the assessors. They have to do a series of things, of course. They have to do a lot of pre-research, and of course they have to do a lot of analysis after they leave the community. But we do show up wearing shorts and t-shirts, and some people bring their tents, and some people bring kayaks and paddle boards, and some people don't bring anything. And so there's just a few hoops that those assessors have to jump through. That's not really all that important. So this is what the assessment looks like, just to give you an overview. I'm going to go through each of these sections tonight. 13 different parts. It sounds long. It is a little bit. But part 1 is prior to the visit. We look at visitor motives, we evaluate the destination. We look at the residential area briefly, a number of tourism assets. We also spend time in the downtown. In 2018, we added a waterfront community section for obvious reasons. Michigan houses 20% of the world's fresh water. We thought we should probably look at the communities critically and on that level. We look at census and safety, and then in 2019, we decided to add arts and culture because of the importance art and culture play in the community around economic development. And so we have some reflective pieces, 12 and 13, which look at people when they leave the assessment, when they leave the community, we ask them to reflect on what they experienced. So it's pretty thorough. Assessors show up with this little green manual, often in our back pockets. So how many folks in the room think they may have seen us in town? Couple hands. Do you have businesses in town?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Sometimes we're obvious, sometimes we're not. Did you know we were coming?
No.
Okay. Did you know we were coming?
I knew about the program. I believe I had the youth.
Okay.
I have the youth too.
What's your business?
I have the Craft Loft above the Chocolate Harbor, and I think they came in to buy chocolate.
Oh, nice.
Pretty
Great.
sure.
I have the youth as well, Simply Fresh Cafe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know about that. Great. So I got to be some full disclosure here. And I may have said this earlier, I got to say it again. We're not here to shame anybody. We're not here to call out any businesses. We're not here to make people, sorry?
I will cry.
Oh. So I may be getting ahead of myself here, but I'm just going to say it now. The objective isn't to shame any private businesses. Several of us had experiences in a public sector type of business that we actually are going to talk about tonight or share the results on, because all of us had this almost similar experience. So we thought, you know what, we should probably keep this in. But it is a public sector asset. It's not anybody's private business from what we understand. If I got that wrong, full disclosure, I didn't know. But I'll talk about it a little bit later. So we're going to dive in. So prior to the visit, everybody had to spend 1 to 4 hours researching the city of St. Clair before coming. Why? I probably don't need to say it, but I always do. People make their decisions with these and tablets. So 20% roughly of the assessment is done digitally to see what your community looks like through the web and through technology. We do that also to match whether or not that experience matches up with the real experience in the community itself. So we visit YouTube, TripAdvisor, Facebook, sometimes the Pure Michigan websites. You know, it's all up to the individual assessor to find out what's there to do in your community. Where do we go? What do we do? Where do we sleep? Where do we eat? Where do we swim if we can? Where do we rent a kayak if we can? Things like that. Sometimes there's a lot of information. Sometimes there's very little. In this particular example, most people start with Google, of course, seems to be the default search engine. One of the challenges that people did, more so the youth than the adults, but the youth did experience it, that when searching for St. Clair, Michigan, St. Clair Shores pops up. Some heads are going, huh? So people know that. All right. Right, is it? Okay. Well, we were kind of like, that's about 40 miles down the road. But anyway, those of us that knew the community was called the City of St. Clair were able to navigate around that issue. Regardless, we asked people, the assessors, what's the most helpful websites? And oftentimes we get more than one. That shouldn't really surprise anybody, but in smaller communities with less resources and less prosperity, oftentimes there is just one website. That's not the case here. We were all divided on what were the most helpful websites. The St. Clair on the River is the one website that stood out for half of us, roughly. The other website is Discover the Blue, which is your regional CVB website. Is anybody here from the CVB? Okay, good. So at the same time, we asked why those websites are helpful. We asked the assessors, right? And here are the reasons. St. Clair on the River had a very nice insider tip list, which was really beneficial for some of us that had no idea what to do in this part of the state, right? Most people were first-timers to even this side of the state. Most people are, doing other things. Again, though, and even with Discover the Blue, they had a comprehensive information list of things to do, places to eat and stay, well-organized categories. These are the actual words from assessors, just to let you know. But at the same time, we asked what are the challenges with the websites, and these are just a summary. I can't possibly share everything, but we pull out the important stuff. It's all important, but there were inactive links found. Inactive suggested brochures that we were directed to and couldn't download the brochures. At the same time, challenges with Discover the Blue did not populate when we Googled the community. In fact, Discover the Blue showed up on like the third page, which nobody goes much past the second page, right? If they even go to the second page. We also found Discover the Blue really buried in the city website, and it was really hard to find. So point being is that these are the two most helpful websites. The second one was really difficult to locate. So also assessors were pretty much perplexed as to why there were 4 websites promoting the City of St. Clair. So you have St. Clair on the River, Discover the Blue, the city, and then I think maybe the 4th is the chamber, but they're all promoting and doing the right thing, but there was some conflicting information. So furthermore, we asked people if they were able to access maps other than their own Google map, right? If when they came to the community, before coming to the community, were they able to see a map or visuals? This map populated, you all have probably seen it. It's really, really nicely done, actually. But also, of course, Google Maps and MapQuest. These things just are sort of default, easy for people to find. Facilities link from the rec department had a map. I'm not sure if it was that one, but then St. Clair on the River had that map, of course. So some of us were able to locate that digitally, right? We're still in the digital section. So we get into social media, right? Because that's how the world moves pretty much this day and age, and people hear about things. And so it's not a requirement to look at social media, but pretty much everybody that does the assessments do take some peeks at it. 4 people went to Facebook. You can see the numbers there. 3 went to TripAdvisor, 2 on Instagram, 1 on YouTube. We asked why they're using the social media. I won't read all of these tonight. I'll leave it up to you to read through some of them. I'll pick the ones that stand out. This probably shouldn't surprise anybody, right? Because with TripAdvisor and even Facebook, I'm not an Instagram user, but the top 2 I can speak to, as well as YouTube, people are looking for events, they're looking for live activity, they're looking for updated things that are happening that may have not made the calendar. Really, generally speaking, most assessors weren't really impressed with what they found on TripAdvisor or Facebook for whatever reason. Nothing really stood out as what people discovered. That being said, We have a data management specialist on campus that quantifies your TripAdvisor data. How many people here use TripAdvisor? How many people don't know what it is? Don't be shy. Okay. So it's an internet platform that houses businesses, hotels, restaurants, activities, and then people review those, and travelers, for good or for worse, there's pros and cons to it, right? Use that to shape their experience and what they want to do. So we aggregate that on campus so you can see actually how TripAdvisor ratings influence the city of St. Clair. So you have, and I'm relying on my data guy on campus for this, right? You have 11 accommodations, 4 of them are hotels, 3 are vacation rentals, none of which are on Airbnb, which was surprising. 3 are motels or bed and breakfast, and then 1 is qualified as a specialty inn, and that's the Murphy Inn. These are TripAdvisor's categories, they're not our categories. That's how they have sort of landed in the TripAdvisor system. So of those 11 accommodations, 4 of them landed on TripAdvisor, 6 on Google Maps, and 3 on VRBO. VRBO is Vacation Rental. There you go. I've never used that. I use Airbnb, but. So you might ask why there's 13 there. That means 2 of the accommodations have landed on 2 of the other sites. Does that make sense? So we share that with you just to know what you have in your community, what populates on TripAdvisor. Visitor attractions. This is pretty important. These are the attractions that have people, visitors to your community, not us, visitors to your community before we've come, have identified for things to do in your community. LaCroix's Riverside Pub, which is a restaurant, but apparently it's also an attraction. Rattle Run Golf Course, St. Clair Art Association, the Art of Fishing Guide Service, Yellow Emerald Mining Company. What? I don't know, but somebody's listed it here. So again, this is TripAdvisor, St. Clair Golf Club. So these are the top 1, 2. Is that really a place, the Yellow Emerald Mining Company?
They run that. It's
Okay.
a jewelry store.
Okay. So these are the things that populate for things to do in your community. So if your community is relying on TripAdvisor to draw people in, you might want to build a team and sort of list some other things to do on there. That's it. Suggestions for this come later. I'm getting ahead of myself. So restaurants, all of these are pretty common places here, I think. I've been here for quite a while, but you can see majority of the main restaurants, I believe, have surfaced up here. Looks like about 10 maybe. And then there's plenty of reviews and there's star ratings. So if you're a restaurant owner in the room tonight and you're not up there, might be some food for thought to join TripAdvisor, maybe.
This is from the internet.
Yeah, this is just internet data. Yeah, TripAdvisor.
From your,
Yeah, no. And our campus folks share this as supplemental data. We started sharing this with communities last year in Marine City because we thought people really need to see this, because this is how people are really making decisions. Not everybody, but a lot of people are shaping their travels, whether it's for work or pleasure, through this. And as I said, there's pros and cons. That's another 2-hour conversation just on the pros and cons, but of TripAdvisor. So just sharing that with you. River crabs up at the top. So how did you visualize the destination prior to visiting? So this is a question we ask people before they come. I'm not going to read those. I'll leave those up for you to read. Take a minute. Is this working? No.
Turn it on.
I don't know where the power button is.
Here, let me see if I can do it.
Paul had it all set up. Yeah.
One behind them. There's one on the podium.
That's for his TV show. Yeah. So this is prior to visiting the destination. So the only knowledge that the people have of your community is what they saw through the web, right? or just what they sort of imagine the community looking like. So at the same time, we ask people their 5-minute impression when they arrive into the community. So we had people coming from the north side of town, the south side of town, and then coming in west from the community. So again, these are positives and negatives. So if you have a tomato, don't throw it at me. Okay? So this is just preliminary stuff, right? When you walk into a community, people immediately have a first impression, right? When you see somebody for the first time, you immediately have a first impression. Oh, sorry, was there?
Yeah, we're trying to read it.
Okay.
Or slow.
We will get printouts of that, yes.
I can send one out, yeah. Yeah, if I have your email on the list.
Thank you.
What I'll probably do is give it to the community leadership team and then they can circulate it out. So I'm going to jump ahead. There's 5 perspectives, right? So I'm going to try and get to everybody's. I don't normally hear this many chuckles. Normally it's silent.
Nothing personal.
None taken. I do this all the time. So I'm gonna move ahead. Is that all right? Yeah. Okay, great. So these are just first minute 5 impressions, right? But remember, we spend 12 to 24 hours here, so perceptions change relatively quickly. So we always ask, would you feel compelled if you were randomly passing by? This place isn't really randomly like in a location where there's random. You're pretty much, you have to want to come here, in my perspective, unless you're driving up the coast. And then you don't have a choice but pass through. So, but that's a positive rating. People felt like if it was in a location that they could randomly pass by, they would stop. We asked, some of this information might not necessarily be relative when it comes to community information. The parts in green are where you scored higher. There's 5 perspectives. The parts in orange is where you scored on the lower side of things. And so, if you had 3 or less, or 3 or more in the negatives, then I gave you an orange. If you had 3 or more in the agree or somewhat agree, you got a green score, if you will. So some of the people had a hard time finding your visitor center or what they would consider a visitor center. So there might not be an official visitor center here. But if there is one, they had a hard time finding it, and the hours were not necessarily conducive to their visits. With that said, you scored relatively high in the other areas. Moving ahead, we look at visitor Yeah?
What newspaper did you use?
Geez. You know what?
Like The Voice?
I don't know.
Herald? Okay.
You know what? I don't know. Top reasons you think visitors come to the destination. So here's a 15 options, and this is all aggregated, right? And so we all came separately. I should have emphasized it earlier. We don't come as a group. So generally, everybody felt that the area was a motive for people to come and relax, be in nature. A couple people identified boating or fishing, and or freighter watching, right? That probably. Engaging in sports, enjoying the weather. So as you can see, you scored, nothing was scored at kind of the lower half of that. Entertainment, business, adventure, even religious activities. So that's kind of, we ask assessors what they think would draw people to this community in particular. So I give an example. We did this up in a community in the Tip of the Thumb a couple years ago, and that was a hunting fishing destination for decades, which really, the hunting fishing industry has dwindled in that part of the state. And they had been focused for pretty much the last 20 years of trying to maintain that image, pumping dollars into being the hunting fishing destination of Michigan's thumb. We did the assessment up there, and the majority of us felt like it was a place that people would come to relax because they're on the water. It's nothing, the community never thought that they would be a place that people would come to relax. As a result of that, the community is now looking at redesigning their marketing pieces, if you will, to perhaps become a relaxing destination, to push that rather than relying on the hunting and fishing industry completely. So just to give you an example of the ideas that might spawn. So we evaluate the destination. This is a quantitative section as well. You'll see the left column is full of 25 maybe different ideas. The column on the right is just an enlarged version of where you scored higher and an enlarged version of where you scored the lowest. I enlarged those because I was a little worried that we might have some distance issues with seeing these smaller numbers. So, you scored really high on safety and security and cleanliness, which should be pretty impressive. Not every community gets that, right? For different reasons. Visitor accessibility to attraction, that includes, accessibility includes for all, right? None of us showed up in a wheelchair, so I can't say we spoke for disabled, but generally speaking, we felt that everything was accessible for the most part. And you can see where you scored the lowest. Quality of accommodations, or variety for that matter, heritage attractions, quality of shopping. And then you can see that in the middle, activities for children. So I would still say that these are still relatively high, considering the bottom is 5, right? You can still go down to 4, 3, 2, 1, and even 0. So you still scored pretty high, if that makes sense. So comments for that include qualitative sections. People provided input as to why they chose the things they did. And there's 4 responses, I think. That's true, they don't have any signs. So again, positives and negatives, right? I hear some people nodding their heads, oh, we've known this, or perhaps you've been saying for 5 years, we got to fix this, and now we're validating it for you, I hope. That's often, that ends up happening too, or we're not validating it. But, so this is kind of, and the data here gets a little bit longer, and we have to simplify it, but really nothing's changed. The message is pretty firm, word for word, from assessors' perspectives. So can I move on, or are people still reading? Okay. So, generation appeal. We ask the assessors what generation would find this area, this community for that matter, the most interesting, or, and this isn't really different per community. It's always kind of in the middle. Some people say the boomers would like this, and the generation X would like this, and the millennials would not like this, or they would. As I said, we talk about the generations and who came to your community so you can understand the perspectives, right? So you had boomers, you had millennials, you even had, what's the generation after millennials? Gen Z?
Gen Z.
Yeah. I'm Gen X. I think Gen Z is,
Gen Z.
yeah. So, this, and of course there's the silent generation. I shouldn't forget them, sorry. So, again, it's all over the board. I wouldn't hone on this too much. The community, I think, is pretty open to a variety of generations. With that said, we do ask in this piece also as well, are there attractions or events the destination is known for? So these are the things that stood out to people, right? These are the things that people saw that were highlighted. It doesn't necessarily mean they are the things your community is known for, but it's from these 5 people, in their short period of time here, these are the things that stood out. So the boardwalk shouldn't surprise anybody, right? Of course, the redevelopment of the hotel, the marina, But again, some people took a liking to the Bridge to Bay Trail. Do people know about the Bridge to Bay Trail? Okay. Does anybody not know about it? We were in several restaurants and nobody could tell us about it. And I was on a bike. I'm not kidding. Yeah.
Good thing there's signs.
Right. Good thing there's a cell phone in my pocket, right? So, you know, some of this stuff stands out, I'm sure. And then any assets that they would feel compelled to visit if they return. So these are the things that would draw people back. Now, do these things land on TripAdvisor? Not all of them, right? In fact, I can't remember everything on TripAdvisor, but I don't think really any of those things landed on TripAdvisor. But from an assessor perspective, these things, the nature sanctuary, which only some of us got to visit, the St. Clair Inn, the Murphy's Inn, the brewery, and paddling the Pine River, were things that people would want to come back and experience if they were to come back. There's the sign, Bridge to Bay Trail. So again, important assets in the community. Residential area, you know, we stay in the close proximity to downtown. We don't really venture out into any new housing developments. You know, we're going to stay pretty much in your historic district. Pretty much anything that's walkable or bikeable. People aren't really venturing far in their car to say, oh, what do the houses look like? So with that said, most people rated this residential area good. Some people said excellent. You know, it all contingent upon where they are, of course. But here are some of the comments that people had to say. Overall good. This is very specific. Do you know where that's at? I mean, of course you do, but do you agree with it?
You can't stop on that hill.
Right.
In the wintertime.
Right, yeah. But then the people coming that way, a couple people actually said, it was like, wow. There's, on the stop sign, it says like three-way stop, like really small over here. I think someone almost got whacked. Nobody got hit, but anyway, just an outside perspective, right? What's it?
We avoid it.
Do you?
We avoid it.
There it is, right. Okay. Well, from an outside visitor perspective, it's seen as it was an issue, and then that's kind of an awkward little part of town, and people were there, and if that stood out, and that sort of north side of town, I would, you know, give some thought as to perhaps how you could highlight that intersection maybe a little bit better. Comments on ADA. Some people really thought the community was quite picturesque. You know, I'm sure people would agree with that. If your house made the picture up here, you know, we don't know who you are. It's just up there. We weren't snooping in the windows or anything. So, tourism assets visited. So this is a pretty lengthy section, and we don't go through it all because it would shame private and public businesses, public assets. We're really concerned about not shaming the private businesses. With that said, we do give the community leadership team the raw data. It's organized by business, and the comments that each business got that we were in do go to the community leadership team. Those comments, it's up to the community leadership team to engage with those businesses if they choose to. We strongly encourage the community leadership team to bring those businesses and public asset managers all in the room together, or however you want to share what comments were made about businesses. And we were in a lot of different businesses. So basically, this is a more personal version of TripAdvisor, because people are already doing this in your businesses, right? They're already coming to your hotels and making comments. And so some communities have chosen to take this further, mostly the chambers of commerce. No pressure, Brian. Mostly the chambers of commerce take this on. It makes complete sense for them to do that. Marine City has done it. Cass City did it. And they pull a meeting together and discuss sort of the feedback. Sometimes it's one-on-one. Sometimes it's looks different in each community. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But we were in restaurants, we were in local businesses, we were on trails, we were in marinas, we were in hotels, of course, campsites. Where else were we, Kathy? We were riding horses. Well, I wasn't, but some of the youth were. We were just about everywhere that I can think of. So that's all I'm going to say about that part. So the downtown business area, so we rank that. Again, it's quantified here. We do have comments on the next slide. The downtown business area is where we probably spend most of our time, if I had to guess. It's different for everybody. Again, we come by ourselves, so. So again, the scores are pretty high, right? I mean, you can't get higher than 15. And so it's aggregated by individual perspectives into one, and this is what comes out with, and then you can see the scores just get lower, and then of course it goes from 7 to 2. So everything between 7 and 2 didn't get a score. It just landed, it was a 7 to 2 drop, if you will. With that said, there's comments about these. Can I go forward, or are people still reading? Go. Okay. So, some emphasis on summer staff. We all had some experiences with some of the summer staff. I think we elaborate on a little bit further into the presentation. Can I move forward?
Yeah.
Additional.
Quick question.
Yeah.
On the last slide, the younger staff. Do you find that's a common theme in various communities you go in? In other words, I mean, any of us have ever hired or worked with younger people, they're great and whatnot, but they tend not to be fully engaged, and sometimes.
Yeah, fully is the right word.
Right. I was just wondering, is that?
Yeah, good question. So you guys are fortunate enough to have summer staff that are certain that age bracket, right? We've done this deeper into communities that their youth have fled to the urban areas, right? So they're really struggling just to get staff. So that's the positive. The fact is that you have kids that come home and want to do these jobs and so forth. So, but yeah, I know for a fact, we've all experienced it. You go to Fishtown or Traverse City or places that are flooded with visitors in the summertime, and that is an issue. I know up in Port Huron they've struggled with some of that as well, getting the staff of a certain age group knowledgeable of, well, first of all, friendly and customer friendly, but then knowledgeable about what to do in the community. So I think it varies, right? It just depends on where the population is. Good question, though. That little courtyard does look nice, though. Good shot. Is that yours? Oh, that's Gail. Yeah, so one person brought their dog. I had a really good experience with their dog, so I thought that was good. Like I said, we all come with different sort of things in our hand, and spouses or perhaps pets, things like that. That's the first visitor we've had with a pet. So waterfront assets. So this is really important, right, for your community, right? Not everybody is blessed with a massive freshwater riverfront as immaculate as ours here in the Blue Water region. That being said, people rated it as good to excellent. Various perspectives as to why. Positives, views, of course, are validating its existence and the care for it, which is important to see. So I'm going to hone in on this a little bit here. This comment, of course, we're not just talking about the St. Clair River, right? We're talking about all the access to water, and that's the Pine River. And you'll see a couple more comments about the Pine River, and some of us did a kayak that at separate times. And one of the biggest comments that we had is most of us were new to kayaking. We've done it, but it's not something we do on a weekend basis, or we're not like out racing too much. Is that the distance markers? We felt really lost on that trail, not knowing exactly how far it was, where it was going, what was around the bend, what happens in the case of some sort of emergency, such as the sinking of a kayak, which happened. So I'll elaborate a little bit further on that, but that's kind of where we're talking about when we say distance markers. That river is a huge potential, right, for not only residents to enjoy more, but for visitors, and safety should be a concern, not only on that river, of course, but on the bigger one out front. Probably preaching to the choir on that, but it's worth pointing out. So waterfront assessment, we rate that just like we do the other areas, and of course you scored really high on the trail system and the marina. But where you guys were lacking, what we thought, and again, I'll start by saying, we felt your signage was lacking for safety reasons and distance that I explained already. Now, that doesn't mean signage isn't there. If there's signage there, that means we didn't see it. So, and if we didn't see it, is it our fault? Is it there's nobody at fault. But we felt that the area could do better with signage. One was the biking trails. Again, the restaurant staff and certain businesses couldn't tell us where the biking trails were. But then when we got on the water trail here, the Pine River folks, as I'm repeating myself now, felt that it could be really highlighted better. Not only that, we had challenges with the staff working at the harbor. My experience, as well as I believe 2 of the other assessors, the local summer staff, again, we're here in June, right, couldn't tell us anything about the river. They couldn't tell us the distance of the river. They couldn't tell us perhaps how to get off the river if we had to. And I think I have a slide on my experience, but I rented the kayak there and my drain plug was not put in. So I'm not an expert kayaker, right? So as a first timer to that river, I wouldn't think to, what is my drain plug pushed in? So I got 30, 40 minutes up the river, paddling, and my kayak started sinking. So I had to get out on your golf course and dump all the water out. Unfortunately, I called my phone, or I called the harbor, and I was like, you guys, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't yelling, but I was like, listen, I'm sinking. I figured out what to do. I dumped the water out, I plugged it in, I got back in, I'm all muddy, whatever, it was fun. But it could have been really bad for somebody who perhaps is a baby boomer or maybe a young kid or another 43-year-old like myself. And so they were overwhelmed and very apologetic, but it was an experience that you probably hope it doesn't happen again. And I don't, again, is that a reflective of summer staff help? Maybe, I don't know. So not to harbor on that too much, I wanted to provide that example. So here is some of the qualitative sections that we found, qualitative responses about the waterfront assessment. And this isn't a perfect world. We ask these questions assuming, rules aside and funding aside, let's say there's a big pot of money that the community can just spend. We ask people, what could be really improved? We don't get hung up on there's no budget. So elevated walkovers, isn't there an initiative to do that with the new hotel? Aren't they building like a bridge? No.
They're gonna put a
Different community. They're going to do what?
hawk light.
Okay, is that what it is? A hawk light, you said? Do people know what that is?
Yeah, just above the light. They will when it goes up.
Yeah, right. They'll learn to use it, right? Okay, so I'm kind of repeating myself here. One person in particular was quite surprised they couldn't swim anywhere near here other than perhaps going to the next community over, Marine City, or up north to Port Huron. So what is one area of the waterfront you think is excellent? Again, positive reinforcement here. The challenges with the kayaking at the harbor were felt by other people, although nobody else had a sinking kayak. Yes, sir?
I'm curious, what stopped people from swimming in the St. Clair River? We swim in there every day and, oh, you're talking about beaches, well, all right, because we do swim in the St. Clair River all the time.
They jump off the boardwalk.
Right.
And there's ladders.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have done that
There's no
myself.
signs that say no swimming, so
Yeah,
they do say
but there are,
lifeguards on duty.
yeah, right. Yeah, I guess from a first-time visitor perspective, and there's a couple assessors in the room that could speak to that perhaps, but I'm willing to bet that it's just so people don't see that type of asset daily. So when you see it, you're in awe about it, but you're also apprehensive about it too, right? So a beach would provide, I'm not suggesting mow over your front lawn and put in a beach, but I'm simply saying a beach provides a safety access point, which you do have 88 kayak launches, of course, that I know about, but so it's, anyway.
Do you know where the nearest beach is to St. City?
Do I?
Yeah.
There's one in Marine City and then there's one up in Marysville.
Port Huron.
There's a public beach just north of town, technically. There is a public beach.
There is.
On
Chrysler Beach, that one.
I'm not even sure the name.
So if I know where it is, but the folks out of town did, yeah. And I guess the point is, none of them were able to learn about public access beach points through your digital representation. Nobody learned through the web that there are access points. So, yeah.
Did anyone ask anyone about the nearest beach? I'm just curious if anyone could tell.
Gail or Kathy?
Because there are beaches closer than Port Huron and Marine City. Did
So
anyone
quick
ask?
response.
I specifically asked, and I was with the youth group, what are some things that we can do here? And nobody mentioned that there was a beach that we could access. So we didn't know that.
But why, if our goal is to promote our city, why would we say, go to Marysville?
So, Kathy, I'll jump on it from here. I'll take it from here. So good question. Good question.
Right.
Good question. So 5 adult assessors came in and 3 of us were told to go to other communities in the businesses, in the restaurants. So I was suggested when I asked about the bike trail, hey, they said no, but maybe down in Marine City you can find a bike trail. Kathy, I think, correct me where I'm wrong, was advised to go to the next town over. And I don't, there are 3 other folks, I can't account for them, but I know a 3rd person had that experience. So, and this is pretty common, kind of Jeff asked earlier about, are you seeing things in other communities? It's pretty common for us to roll into a community like this happened south of here, and they were said, oh no, there's nothing to do here, go to the next town over. That happens a lot. And it happened here too. So that's kind of, it does happen probably everywhere. And that's a reflection probably of the staff, whether they're short-term or long-term, not knowing about insider tips that are on websites, not knowing about events that are on other websites, things like that. Some humorous questions. People always giggle at these. Did you experience any pleasant or unpleasant smells in the community? Sometimes we get all yeses and sometimes we get all no's. This one in particular, somebody smelled dead fish. Perhaps they were down somewhere near a waterfront. Other communities we've done this in don't realize they have, production smells that they've been smelling for 20 years, and outside visitors come in and think, and so this question actually has enlightened a few communities. At the same time, did you experience any unpleasant or pleasant sounds in the community? One person did experience the harbor master communicating that the drawbridge was lifting. So they felt that was a nice charm to the community. Senses and safety. So did you feel welcome at all times? Overall 5 people said yes. You can see some of the comments there before, after. Again, some comments about the short-term summer seasonal staff, some reflections of ethnicity or perhaps how minorities might feel. overall people, and if you look back on the previous slides, you scored pretty high on customer service. But again, we all sort of had a little situation where we were either suggesting to go to another town, or they couldn't tell us where the bike trails were, or perhaps how to rent a kayak properly. Safety and security, we ask every assessor. One person did say no. They spent time in Grieg Park. Is that how I say it? Grieg Park. Okay, so there's an I in there. It threw me off. And so somebody took their kid with them and went hiking through Grieg Park. And it's just a short trail, but at the same time, although there's a map in front, that particular person didn't see any sort of mile markers as to how long the trails were in there, how long the trails were, or once they were in the park system, they weren't quite sure, you know, with the kid, if they had to run out, do they go to the left, do they go to the right, do they keep going straight? And even though it's a small park, that person in particular was just a little unsure of, you know, perhaps they were first-time parents and they're sort of like, oh, what happens if this happens? You know, getting all, but something to consider. So arts and culture, getting near to the end here. As I said, this is a new piece that we developed with our arts and culture groups across the state. We devised some questions, mostly qualitative. Your community has embraced public art compared to some. We asked on what could be improved. I'll leave that up there. One person in particular, having really no knowledge of the city of St. Clair, felt that there was some Native American history here that could be unearthed. And I don't know if, well, there's got to be some.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, there's got to be quite a bit. In fact, I think this area is pretty significant for that. But walking trail, people were quite impressed when we heard about that, knowing that this area of the state is quite famous for its shipbuilding industries and, of course, mining to some extent. And so when we got here, a few people did this historical walking trail, but when we're using our QR codes, one person doesn't use a smartphone, so they couldn't access this. Regardless, the folks that did try doing the walking trail, when they scanned that QR code with their phone, they got routed to another website. And that website, as you can imagine, in the size of your phone, was really dense, and nobody pursued it further. We were expecting, I think, from a visitor perspective, once you scan each barcode, that you're going to get specific information on that vessel. Is what that's what it implies. So perhaps there's broken links to that, or there's perhaps, I don't know. So sharing that with you. More murals would be a nice addition. So people did really enjoy the murals down in the harbor. That's something that really stood out. So we're going to move into the lasting impressions here, and that'll be a breakdown of positive experiences and negative experiences. So we really get into, yeah. So I said we weren't going to shame any businesses, but we're going to promote the ones that got recognition. So Simply Fresh is up there. So to counteract my negative experience, somebody had a very positive experience kayaking the Pine River. So perhaps there's some balance, right? Walkability to the community, especially waterfront, sense of character, support for outdoor activities, ambient service, quality of food at the River Crab. If they're in the room, kudos to them too. So with every positive experience, we do share the negatives. Can I go ahead?
Go ahead.
So,
that is true. That is so true.
you know, and so that's not to shame the brewery, right? People came on every day of the week. Businesses are closed at least once or twice a week. I can't be certain what day that fella or that assessor came out, but I think maybe it was a Monday or I think a Tuesday. Anyway, one of the other assessors, not to harbor on your harbor too much, but they camped in the harbor and they weren't given an access code to the bathroom. And so after they checked in and pitched their tent, the harbor closed and they didn't have access to the facilities. So our intern, who was part of our assessment team, had to water your lawn, I guess. I don't know what she did, but that was another experience. So again, we ran into some real challenges, customer services challenges at the harbor, right in the dead of summer. That's a huge asset, and for 3 or 4 of us to really have those challenges it might be something to look at. That's me with the rented kayak, of course. Again, college students are college students, right? You can't expect the world of them too much, but it left a sour taste in a few of our mouths. But so moving on, most negative experience, and not terribly negative, right? But we had another assessor that was here during a public kayaking event and wanted to rent a kayak, and there wasn't one available because they were all rented out, which is a good thing, right? Because that public kayaking event is getting more people on the water, but at the same time, visitors coming in might want to do that at the same time too. Biggest challenge is facing the destination. So this is where we get people to reflect on what they saw here and what they could imagine it being, I guess. So some of the signage information you've seen before, bad roads. We were here before MDOT did your all redesign, right? I've met with MDOT in the last few weeks, and like, oh, we just did our traffic thing, and now you guys are down to 1 lane, which seemed to happen overnight or something. So just some perspectives from a variety of different lenses, if you will. One in particular about retaining youth, young adults, and different ethnicities. Accommodation, of course, and south of the bridge, right? Very few of us, I think, went south of the bridge other than to the harbor.
Why?
What's that?
Why?
I don't think, well, from my perspective, there wasn't really anything to draw me down there.
But as a visitor to the city, I would expect you to see the whole city, not just the downtown area, not the marina area, but once you get south of the bridge. I mean, there are things down there.
Sure. But again, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're totally right. You're totally right.
Excuse me.
Yeah, hang on, guys. Hang on, everybody. Hang on.
Yeah. I run into an awful lot of people that like to go into towns like this, and they like to go through the cemeteries. If you're talking about native, history and that's what they're looking for. Some of the oldest gravestones, things of that nature. But I guess I figured that if you were going to do this, not just spend your time here or the city area proper, but venture to the...
So several people went north, several people went west, a couple of us rode the Bay to Bridge Trail up in north and south, several people kayaked, several people did a few other things that I hope I conveyed clearly enough. But the one thing, very few people, I don't know if anybody went south of the bridge because it didn't invite us down there. It wasn't inviting. So if there's a Native American cemetery down there, that would be something to highlight. For your reason that you just said, people come to communities and they do that specific thing. If that exists, strongly encourage you to put it up on the digital website and let people know. I'm familiar with what's south of the bridge, so I shouldn't use myself as an example because I do live in the county. But I will let Gail and Kathy respond. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but from my perspective, it just isn't like, hey, come down here. And some people seem to think there isn't much down there. I don't know. Maybe there is. I mean, Marine City is down there, but we're not going down for that, right? Although we were suggested to, but nobody did. So, do you want to add to that? No pressure. No. Okay. No pressure. Okay.
No, in my research, I went to the places that attracted me
Yeah.
during my research.
Right, right. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. You bet. And not everybody is able to ride the bike paths either and things like that, or even get out and kayak. So, you know, we could, anyway. Moving forward, so biggest challenges facing the destination, these are just perspectives. What will you remember most 6 months from now? So these are the things, these are the things, what's so funny?
You're such a whiner.
Oh, yeah.
Did I mention?
Yeah. Second bullet point, being directed to neighboring communities for things to do. There's a lot to do here, right? Some of us experienced this. Yes, I had my sinking kayak experience, which was, you know, it tested my survival skills. What's that?
Is that a picture of it?
I didn't take that one. That's one of the other assessors. Yeah, we both saw that same turtle that day, though. But that's right around where I sank. Passionate residents wanting to improve their communities. So the mere presence of 60, 70 people being here tonight, we saw that. That resonated with us before we even finished the assessment. Golfing, kayaking, there's quite a bit to do here, but then that individual felt there were limitations for a variety of different food, so forth and so on. So what, you know, you guys have got a pretty strong branding due to perhaps the CVB and with their work and the DDA and the city and however that whole partnership works. But we always ask, because a lot of communities don't have branding and they're stuck with branding and they're not really quite sure you know, what they have or how to market it. So we always ask, you know, what one statement best describes the destination. And you can see the different responses there. A variety of, you know, positives and negatives and shorter descriptions and so forth. Somebody was here for your music festival. So we're getting near to the end. I'm going to share one last piece and then we're going to take a break. And this is called a tourism area life cycle model. And I really don't have a solid amount of time to go through this, but I'm just going to introduce it to you because it conceptually allows communities and business owners and resorts, if there are any here, to see perhaps some of the challenges that might come in the future. This is not a guaranteed trajectory of where you will be in 20 years or 30 years. This could take 50. I've seen some communities in other countries go from 1 to 5 in 5 years. And I've seen some communities never get past 2. So what happens is, in the first stage of a tourism area, if you will, or a business, this originally was applied to resorts, is there's discovery and exploration where the destination has very little visitors, and you often don't notice them. They don't really stand out. And as visitors increase, the community becomes a little more entrepreneurial. People start launching businesses to provide services, maybe a kayak shop, maybe a brewery, maybe a shared working space, maybe a restaurant, ethnic foods, whatever, bike trails, fishing guides. And as the involvement increases, so does the number of people, and then the services increase, and then people get into a development phase where outside investors start paying attention. And the big chains start moving in, perhaps fast food, perhaps some of the larger hotel chains, some outside investment, redevelopment maybe. And then this typically is where the perception of the visitor, the resident's perception of the visitor changes, right? There's an influx of visitors. People start to kind of come in and some of the residents feel a little bit like, how can I afford to live here? Or the cost of living goes up, so forth and so on. Again, this isn't a magic sort of this will happen, but these are the themes. Consolidation happens. That doesn't mean things get smaller. It just means development has stopped. Slowed down, I should say. Seasonal economies happen. Businesses flourish, some sink, cost of living increases, and gradually over time, communities or destinations in general hit sort of a stagnation phase, and they may stay here for decades. We're always relying on the same number of visitors. One place in particular that comes to mind is Key West. Key West isn't going to grow any bigger. They're always going to have the same number of vessels coming in. Geography also limits their growth, of course. They're surrounded by water and a bridge. But over time, all things aside, in this phase, policies either protect the assets the community is dependent on, or policies that don't exist indirectly are responsible for the decline of the destination. And typically, over time, communities may go into a decline. Now, I don't want to get too far into this, but of course politics happen, economics happen, disasters happen, natural disasters, if you will, economies crashing. And so some of this is out of the hands at times for communities that are really tourism dependent. Unless they've got it, So what happens is, communities can end up stabilizing with strong public and private sectors. So entrepreneurs and public officials end up working together in order to maintain sort of a status quo, if you will. But some communities may decide to reinvent themselves. And that really requires some extensive work. And other communities may decide to scrap tourism altogether and hopefully look for outside investment to keep their community robust and prosperous. So the reason I'm showing you this is because we ask our assessors when they come here as to what stage your community might be in, what they think you might be in, without knowing much about your community. In fact, very little, right? So I'm just going to say one more thing about this. This isn't an entrepreneurship program, but entrepreneurs play a super significant piece to this puzzle, because what happens here is you have organic entrepreneurship happening here. People are seeing assets that most of the residents may have forgotten about. An example would be a brewery going into Lexington, Michigan, or the winery up there from an outside investor. Perhaps the Warwater Brewery folks here would be an example of an organic entrepreneur. And then you have up here in the rejuvenation stage is kind of a revitalizing entrepreneur, somebody that comes in again and sees an opportunity to open up a kayak shop or a fishing charter or a brewery or any types of sort of 21st century innovation. And so we just like to highlight that piece. An example might be the gentleman that bought the St. Clair Inn that's revitalizing that, restoring it, bringing it back. By the way, when is that going to open?
December. The first wedding is this weekend.
Wasn't it supposed to be there, open in May?
March.
And then March.
June and July.
Yeah.
Sunday's paper said by Thanksgiving, November.
Oh, okay. All right. Some of the assessors are asking, because when we were here, that restoration didn't impact our perception of your community. We all saw it as a good thing, of course. But anyway, one shows rejuvenation. I think that was me, actually, because really what happens, one person's rejuvenation is another person's discovery. When we do this program, we often ask everybody in the room where you think your community is. We're not going to have time to do that tonight. And oftentimes, the folks that have been in the community a really long time think you're in a rejuvenation, and the new residents to the community, regardless of age, typically might find yourself in a discovery exploration. It all just depends on who's been here longer. Make sense? See some heads going up. Yeah. So we're going to take a break. And after the break, we're going to hear from Kathy about the youth assessment, and then we'll wrap up. So I say 10 minutes, but how about we come back at 7:30? Please.
Okay, so I'm going to present the youth first impression. So I'm very excited to have this opportunity. I was really happy to be able to partner with Andy and provide this opportunity to some young people. My name is Kathy Jameson, and I'm an extension educator for the Children Youth Institute. So, you can't hear me? There you go. Oh, better. All right. My name is Kathy Jameson. I'm from the Children Youth Institute from MSU Extension. So some of you might have heard of 4-H, and that's where we are housed. And I've been with Extension for about 15 years. But this is the very first impressions that youth have been involved in the Lower Peninsula. So we were really happy that St. Clair was able to take advantage of this and provide this opportunity to young people. So first of all, this is a little profile of the assessors. So we had 5 female and 1 male, and there was 5 Caucasians and 1 African American. Now, for their educational level, we had 3 high school students. Now, 2 of them were actually in college, so they were sophomores in college. So I wanted to get this perspective because I know a lot of towns are asking how can we bring those young people back to our communities. And then I also had 1 college grad. Now, when I talk about youth assessors, this is also including my male chaperone, who is also here. So Sept. Now he is a millennial. He's our only millennial in this group. And the rest of them were Generation Zs. So that's the one right after the millennial generation. So those are the young people that are in school right now, in high school, and even some of the college students are considered Generation Zs. Just so you know where they're all coming from, we had 4 from Macomb County, 1 in Sanilac, and we actually had 1 from Indianapolis. So they were cousins. She was in town for the summer with her cousin, so we had her come along, just so you know. Now, these young people we did not just advertise anybody who wanted to do this. These were almost hand-selected individuals, so we were looking for young people who had some leadership skills. In fact, one of them is the president of our 4-H Youth Council in Macomb County. And all of the rest of them had some leadership experience. So we worked with our program coordinators in 4-H to identify the young people and some of the other educators to try to find the individuals. We did have another male who was from high school who at the last minute, and he was an African American, because I was really looking for diverse people. So I wanted both males and females. I wanted to have a diverse ethnicity, and I also wanted to have some people from urban and rural areas, so you can get a greater perspective. So that was my goal, and this is what we ended up having. So it was, and here you see a picture of the young people at the front in the town center area. So this is what happened. On the assessment took place in one day, so we all came the same day. That's the unique thing about the youth assessment. We have to have chaperones. So we were able to bring them all together. We rented a car, and it was on June 1st, and we were here all day, 9 to 4. The nice thing is because I had another chaperone, we were able to see a pretty good area of your city. So what happened is we would meet in the morning, we identified what we wanted to do, and then we met in the middle of the day, and then at the end of the day. So we did debriefing throughout the day at those different times. Prior to them being assessors, they went through a training, just like the adult assessors do. We did an online training, and then I actually sent the pre-assessment to them right after that training, and I wanted them to turn their pre-assessment back in so I could look it over, and that was going to help guide what we were going to do during our day. So I wanted to see what their interests were, what they wanted to see, and some of their first impressions. So some of the things that we visited during the day is we went to the marina. We actually went kayaking. It happened to be, the weather was not that great. It was a warm day, but there was a storm brewing, and it turned out to be a pretty good flooding that day. We went to the museum. We went to the horse riding stables. We went on the boardwalk. We broke up and probably hit every single shop in that whole shopping center. We went to Gregg Park, and we went through the trails. The Chocolate Harbor was one of their highlights, as well as we walked through the residential area. Some of the restaurants that we went to is we went to the Simple Fresh Cafe. That's where we met in the morning. And then in the evening, we did our debriefing at the Voyager, and then in the middle of the day, we stopped at Drifters to meet and reconvene and do some additional debriefing. So you can see where we went, and there's some pictures from the youth. So here's a little bit about their web and social media. So just so you know, the social media that they used was significantly different than what the adults use. So 4 of them used Facebook, 2 used Instagram, and 2 used Twitter. So they weren't using your travel site. They did do a search of Google and looked for St. Clair, and they were the ones, 3 out of the 6 individuals actually started doing the assessment of St. Clair shores. And because they're younger and they might not be familiar with the area, they started doing their pre-assessment of that area. So then I ended up I said, wrong city, we need to assess the city of St. Clair. And so I had them redo their assessment. But it's just noteworthy, and I'm sure you're already aware of that, but looking at how that can be, so that doesn't happen. I don't have the solution for you, but that's something that I wanted you to know. Some of the things that they mentioned, though, they really were looking for more interactive on your websites. So for instance, rather than just one photo, they would like to see a slideshow of photos. They might like to see some videos, some interaction. They really were looking for things to do, and having those details, and they wanted those connections to the businesses and the dates and all the information, so they know it was really all about what activities can we do here. So just a recommendation, if you want to attract the younger audience, you really need to use some of those other social media platforms, such as Instagram and Facebook, as well as Twitter. There's a lot of young people on Twitter as well. So, but their very first impression, when looking around, they were very impressed. They thought that your city was extremely clean, well-maintained, they felt safe. They really enjoyed the landscaping that made it even seem more attractive and cleaner. They saw the shopping center, so they were looking at the places where they can go eat, where they can go shop, what young people do. And then they were looking at, of course, your beautiful waterfront. You can't miss that. Their first impression was this is going to be a great place. They were all very excited about their trip, so it was all positive, their first impressions. But another thing, in looking at the research and the data, they did really want those links to those businesses, and they were having some hard times finding those things. So I just definitely want to mention that. So one of the questions, this is a unique question that we asked on the adult assessment that is not obviously asked for the youth, this is what we asked for the youth and not asked in the adult assessment, is this a community you would consider moving to after high school or college to live and work? Now, all the Generation Z, so you're talking about the high school kids and the ones in college, just starting college, they said no. They would not want to move here. And mainly the reason is they wanted more activities. It wasn't busy enough for them. They wanted to, they felt there was a small feeling to it. So they were just looking for, they wanted more activities to do that were fun. So that was the big thing that I saw. They felt like it was very relaxing. It was just too laid back for them. So, and I was surprised because some of the young people were in communities that were of similar size to St. Clair. I can understand it from the ones that were like in the suburban areas and the one from the city, but even the ones that were from rural areas had that same perspective. Another question that we asked them is, what would you tell your friends about this place? And these are just highlighting some of the things that they really enjoyed doing. So we did go kayaking. We had
we were only out there for a little bit, and then the rain came, and then there was lightning, so we had to just hurry back and paddle as fast as we could. But they would have liked to have gone more, and they wanted to experience that. Another comment that one of the young people said, it's a really nice one-day trip. They felt like they saw it all in that day. Of course, they didn't. There's still a lot more to see, but they didn't know enough through their research all the different attractions. So from what they could see, they felt like they did it all and they enjoyed it, but they weren't sure if they'd want to stay longer. Another thing that they indicated is they really enjoyed Palmer Park, and they walked the river down past the bridge. Everybody was super friendly. They thought it'd be a good place for fishing. But the size of the town, the city is pretty small, and they didn't feel like it was open to teenagers. And the reason they said that is when we were here, there was not a lot of young people around. It was mainly middle class or older that were there. And we were here on a day that they actually had that, there was an event, it was Bark in the Park. So they did attend that, and there were some younger people there, but overall their impression was there was not a lot of teenagers. So they thoroughly enjoyed the horseback riding. They really enjoyed the museum. It was very interactive. We had, oh, almost time, okay. Thank you. I know, he only gave me 10 minutes, so he's keeping me in line. Okay. But they really enjoyed the museum. I'll just skip that. I can talk loud. All right. So here are some suggestions that the young people had. They wanted some more activities. So they felt like that green space in the town center was wonderful, but they want to play some cornhole and ladder ball and maybe some horseshoes. Maybe not at the town center, but maybe you have this beautiful Palmer Park. And there was a lot of green space, so they want to be able to do things. More shopping options, like souvenir shops. They felt a lot of the shops were expensive, so they wouldn't be able to afford the things, so they wanted some more lower priced places. They also wanted more food options, like a cool coffee shop. They were looking for more international foods, because they wanted more diversity. That was another comment that they mentioned. They did not see a lot of diversity here, and they wanted that. They wanted you to target the town toward the younger generation by maybe adding some playgrounds, maybe a movie theater, volleyball court, basketball court. Now, I know these things are there for the ones that went to Gregg Park. They saw that there's a volleyball court there and that there's basketball, but it's not going to be, it's off the beaten trail. So they wanted something to bring more people to the downtown area. They wanted more gardens and community centers. I thought this was word verbatim, redo the roads, and that was from a young perspective. One of the things, we were walking outside of town, we were looking for the museum, and of course they're looking at their phones, and they almost bumped into a sign that was on the sidewalk. So it was like a no parking sign. So that was another one of the comments is, if there are signs on the sidewalk, you got to take them off because people are going to run into them because they're looking at their phones. So I mean, it's something to think about because they almost ran into it. Another thing you need to think is they were looking for a brochure that had the activities. They want to know about what activities they can do here. So that was my last slide, and Andy was, no, I believe so. Let me see. Yep, that was my last.
Okay.
I did it, because we only have a little bit more time.
Yeah, we want to be respectful of everybody's time. So did a microphone go out?
Yeah, it was going in and out, so I just figured I could use my...
Okay, no worries. So we're going to get into the suggestions from the adult section. So we still have to go through that. I want to be respectful of everybody's time and try to get out here at 8. We still have quite a few slides. So we, like Kathy had suggestions from her youth group, the same 5 adult assessors. We just have suggestions. They're things that the community can act upon, or they're things that they might choose not to. So in a perfect world, we ask all the assessors, what would you change? And this is all zoning ordinances aside and funding aside. In a perfect world, these are the things that the 5 assessors came up with. that they thought would, and this is adults, right? Did I say that? This isn't youth. So comments on infrastructure, comments on welcomingness, advertising of the canoes, some emphasis on the Trail Town marketing campaign that has existed, we think, for a little while. We're not quite sure. Seem to be some dual marketing imaging going on. Some folks had comments about the land south of the bridge, and if they could, perhaps maybe the cargo property be turned into co-working space. I'm sure cargo employs a lot of people in town, so with all due respect to them. Suggestions for having a water ferry to move people up and down the coastal communities. You guys are in a really nice location with a lot of cool little spots up and down the thumb. Give some thought to zoning for short-term rentals and capitalizing on the small number of short-term rentals that you have currently. Some of the communities south of you and north of you have a much larger, much more robust short-term rental industry there through Airbnb and VRBO. Capitalizing on that, because that's not going to go away. But it also isn't a silver bullet either. Can I move ahead here?
Yes.
Okay. So when we do suggestions, we break them into 4 categories. The 4 categories are art, business, community, and then recreation. And these are kind of the 4 themes that come out from assessors' perspectives, and we lump them into these categories. Is everything in art only in art? No, certainly not. Art influences community, art influences business, art to some extent influences recreation, and vice versa for all of those, but we have to sort of break them up. So these are the suggestions. Some of them are low-hanging fruit, could probably be done on first thing tomorrow morning to some extent, and others would take significantly a lot more time. So I'm not going to read through those. Can I move forward?
Yes.
Okay. Don't be shy if you want me to wait a few minutes.
No,
Okay. Well, we're going to take everybody's perspective, and not just one individual. So when we're talking about business, these are a number of suggestions that had come up. Descriptive signage to the marina for kayaking and camping. Fortunately, that was discovered, but I think only through online. Emphasis on the harbor staff and safety and knowledge of the asset that they are managing and recommending and providing services to. Educate local business owners on the insider tip page. That, again, repeating myself here, that's something that several of us experienced in the businesses. Wait staff didn't seem to have a whole lot of knowledge on things to do. And encouraging that wait staff and local businesses to refrain from directing people to other neighboring communities. Nothing wrong with doing that, but if your first point of entry into the community is a local business, and that local business is telling you to go down the road, you really want that to happen for your local businesses and entrepreneurs that are here trying to make it? Not really. Nothing wrong with Marine City, nothing wrong with Port Huron. We're all in it together, right? But at the same time, hotels, some folks had challenges with some of the hotels in town making reservations, corresponding through emails and websites. It's the 21st century, right? 2019, websites should be pretty accessible and have the information that customers and visitors need, whether you're here for business or pleasure. Some folks thought that there were some entrepreneurial options for lake-to-table restaurants. That's farm-to-table. Do I need to explain what that is? Okay. Freshwater fish to table. They're big in different parts of this country and state, but they look like an entrepreneurial option. So engaging social media platforms better, that was probably pretty obvious earlier. Ethnicity around food, and that is something you folks seem to know about already. Moving forward with community, some of the assessors, in fact probably all of us to some extent, take the greenery of a community into account, add recycling bins to demonstrate that you actually care about the ecology of the area. That's not to say that all of a sudden, your rivers are full of plastic water bottles. That's certainly not the case. But That slow pedestrian crossing, that seems to be something happening more regularly across the county. We're seeing pedestrian crossing signs. Some people felt a little unsafe crossing from the main downtown, the business area to the Palmer Park area. Your local supermarket did not make the St. Clair County community map, so that's a suggestion. That's directly from me. I was looking for a place to get some snacks. Anyway, consolidate info across 4 websites, promoting St. Clair to one accessible location, and eliminate conflicting information. So, variety of websites had different events, and some of it was conflicting. So, we see that a lot when we do this in different communities. Don't bury the most helpful websites. So the ones that we thought were the most helpful might be ones that you might want to look at surfacing and making sure that they are readily available. CVB and the St. Clair on the River, is that the DDA website?
Yes.
Thought so. Community image and branding, consistency, added visibility, up-to-date directory. We saw this not only is missing letters, but there were some we had a 2018 version right outside Hungry Howie's, so that was almost a year off. And if you're trying to attract a variety of different people, you need to be very deliberate about it in terms of making everybody feel welcome, if that's your goal. So moving forward, can I move forward?
Yep.
Great. Recreation is the last. And, some of the, this must be from Kathy. Giant chess Jenga. So some communities attract people to their front landscapes through interactive games. I think Port Huron's got a big tic-tac-toe. What is it? Chess? Yeah.
Chess.
I don't see people using it, but it looks cool. Putting mile markers on the Pine River, that would encourage, I think, people to use it because it gives a sense of safety and people can navigate a little bit better around the bends and so forth. Adding those same things to the nature path would encourage use from our perspective. Marking trails better, adding signage to the Bridge to Bay Trail, although on the trail itself, that's pretty well marked. That's pretty impressive. Because you can go north, 8 miles to Marysville, and you can go south 6 or so to Marine City. So the folks that did ride it, there's 2 of us. Once we were on it, it was marked well, but it was a matter of being in town as to how do we get to it. And so, repeating myself there. So those are our suggestions. A lot of them are pretty low-hanging fruit. We see a lot of communities able to tackle this stuff without a lot of funding. Some of it's digital, some of it's, probably already in the works, I would think. There's probably already some of this stuff happening. So at this time, Kathy and I will take a few minutes for questions I can answer about the youth or the adult assessment. She can answer about the youth assessment. If you have questions, there are a few more slides, so don't run out. We're going to hear from your community leadership team in a minute. Is there any questions? Any tomatoes? Anybody angry? Sir.
Why should businesses in the local government take action on these results, given the fact that there's so few evaluators? I mean, it seems like such a small sample size. What confidence could we have that your recommendations are actually generalizable to a larger population of visitors?
So it's good.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
So I've been through this, and I think they're pretty much dead on with everything. I've lived here for a year, and I'm still trying to find stuff that isn't readily accessible in terms of making it obvious. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in this whole area. It's overwhelming, as a matter of fact, the amount of stuff. But it's fragmented in terms of the information. And so, having been through it, I think this is dead on.
Thanks. I agree. But I'll give just a brief answer. So again, that's why we call these suggestions. We're not telling you to do it. We're just simply pointing out to you that there are mixed matches with the digital side and sort of some suggestions as an outside visitor. Can you really base your future development on the perspectives of 5 people? Not really, but the goal of the program is to provide you with ideas and for you guys and the community leadership team to go back out and look at this stuff a little bit deeper. We're providing you with a critical eye after I leave. So, any other questions? Can't be just one, right? Any on the youth side of things? The youth was a much smaller assessment, right? It was much, I wouldn't say much less in depth, but you know.
Curious, on the youth thing, it said that the 4 girls said, no, they wouldn't live here. What did the boy say?
Oh, he definitely wanted to. But he was the older millennial.
Yeah, so I live like 15, 20 minutes away from here, moved there fairly recently, so I hadn't really visited St. Clair. My perspective, I think it's a beautiful community. I would live here, myself personally, but I could see why those younger folks said those things. Yeah.
And our interests change, right, over time. So Kathy's husband wants to move here, by the way. And they live down in Macomb. So, all right, let's get to questions. I see, Chrissy, how about you?
What were the 4 websites that you based all this information on? You said the...
So St. Clair on the River, which is, I guess, the DDA website, the Discover the Blue, the city website, and the chamber website.
Okay.
Yeah. Sir?
Trying to figure out how we compare to other communities. If you would plot all of your communities on a continuum 1 to 10, with 5 being right in the middle, where would we be?
It just depends what you're trying to compare it to. I mean, you guys...
communities, you're grading on a scale.
But what's this, 10 is what? Tell me what 10 looks like.
Best.
What is best? Traverse City? I need an example. I need you to tell.
What is your best community?
I don't think we have one.
Okay, well, don't tell me the characteristics of the best community is a 10. The characteristics of the worst
okay, I got you.
zero.
I got you. So minus the digital side, I would say you guys are, you know, you swing far on the high pendulum because of your access to water, your access to the Metro Detroit urban population, your access to government resources and planning officials and Canada. And so I would say that's what I said when I started talking about this. You've got prosperity on your side. Now, I've done this in Elkton at the tip of the thumb. I've done it in Cass City. I've done it in Sebowing. And those communities are really struggling. Where do I put them in a village of 800 in the dead center of the thumb? 2 or 3. But what's the big question I pose to them and I pose to you, and that we don't need an answer tonight because that's not what I'm here for, is like, what's the ultimate goal, right? And so after I'm done talking, we're going to hear from the community leadership team as to really what is intended next for the city of St. Clair, and we've got some folks here from Metropolitan Planning that might help answer that question with the city. So does that help? Like,
To the right side of the midpoint or to the left?
Number 7.5.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to go to her and come back to you. Yeah,
I was looking for an overall rating, but the other question I had is, did you look at the demographics of the city before you decided to visit?
No.
Before you decided what months to visit?
No.
Because there are activities that happen later on in May, June, July, that there's tons of stuff for kids to do. So that was my other question, is to find out what made you choose those particular months that you visited.
For basically the timeline dictated that and the funding cycle. We always give communities the option of choosing the season they would prefer us to come. 9 times out of 10, they want us to come in summer. And 9 times out of 10, we do, because the days are longer, therefore we can see more and do more. But to your point, should we have come in July and August? We don't want to come when your community looks the best.
all the time. There's so much that's going on in the city.
Right.
And there's so much development going on in the city. Sure. There's always a window for change and improvement, but I just think that you picked a bad time.
I think our biggest problem is lack of communication with the outside world on what we're doing in this town. Our
So
assets.
you had a question real quick?
I just had, we're just a year in to living here.
Sure.
And so we kind of were you,
Mm-hmm.
but for real. And so
a lot of times when we're like at a restaurant or something, we would be asking about where a movie theater, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
And some of the times, the answers were like, go to Marysville, or Marine City. But that's because the person lived in Marine City, that is working here, but lives in Marine City. So they're telling us about the community that they know.
Sure.
And I find that the young people are extremely outgoing and polite and very relatable to us old folk. And I think in this community, that's an asset and an impressive part. But I also think that it's common for young everywhere want to get out of the small town, move to the big city. But I also hear about that they were born and raised here, moved to the big city of Royal Oak, which cracks me up. But Royal Oak, and then when they got married, going to raise children, they came back here.
Well, that's common.
So I think your young people might not be able to, and at no fault of their own, be able to see themselves
I agree.
as parents.
They don't have, right, they lack the foresight.
They're in a different stage of life.
Right, so I don't see how they could see that
Sure.
future.
But to add to that, I think, I don't know what questions were asked, that people were diverted someplace else, but the fact of the matter is that we don't have everything here. So if somebody's asking for something that we don't have, like a movie theater, you gotta tell them to go someplace else.
Was there another question?
So I'm a small business owner
Yeah.
in that plaza, so you guys do have in the report individual feedback on some of the businesses?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't say it was yours, I don't know. What business do you have?
It's a home goods store called Blackbird.
Okay, we visited a lot. I mean, there were, probably 20 different places. So how about one more question, and then we're going to have to hear from the community folks. So there's two hands. Go ahead. Oh.
I have to agree with, I'm the Google queen. We live in the community right below us, Marine City. And as far as this whole county goes, to try to find what's going on, which, we're old people, we want to go places, we have time. And it is very hard to find things. That's my big complaint all the time, that why don't they have something on their Facebook page? Why? You can't find it anywhere. And I do think that's a real weakness in this county, not just St. Clair, but I do think it's a real weakness. That we have to become more internet savvy.
Was that your question? We'll take one more. I saw your hand go up. Okay, Kashin?
Yeah, so Andy, you've shown about that map where you've done this assessment before.
Yeah.
So is there like a role model, some case study where you did the study for them and they kind of learned from it and made some changes?
Oh, yeah.
There's lots of them.
Yeah, that's a whole nother presentation. I'd be happy to do it for you. Every community is left here and just hammered stuff out. It's been amazing.
Can you just name like one that stands
Sure.
out?
So Imlay City developed a beautification committee. Instead of penalizing blight, they started awarding beautification. So encourage people to beautify their city rather than, encourage beautification. That's just one thing. Elkton started a youth entrepreneurship program. 5 of the communities are going through redevelopment ready certification through the MEDC people. That includes Elkton has applied for it. Seaboing, I think, is going through it. So that program has gotten all of those communities together through a community leadership team, has gotten them organized, started, and then they've gone through, they're going through these MEDC processes. The Village of Dundee down by Ann Arbor has applied to be a Main Street community as a result of participating in this program because they got the results they needed. Imlay City, Marlette, Seaboing, East Jordan up by Petoskey have all been successful in raising additional $5,000 to $10,000 from their community foundation to do trail development and trail signage. Marine City, I'm going to talk with in January. They used some money to put in new signage around their Beta Bridge Trail. Gosh. Elkton has encouraged murals in their downtown. Elkton's a village of 800. They've gone and gotten professional mural painters to come in and do murals in their downtown. because they have a gas station in their downtown that gets 4,000 visitors on a Saturday. They want those people to stop. How do you get them to stop? Make your community look pretty. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, I presented to the MEDC directors last summer, and I presented a few other times across the country on the impacts of what's happening here. We've had retirees start their first farmers market in Sebowing. We've had the city of Marlette in Sanilac County relaunch their DDA after doing nothing for 9 years. We've seen the village of Elkton relaunch their DDA after doing nothing for 4 years. So, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So when you talk about like what's the perfect model, there isn't one, because so many communities are in different places. So many communities are either like they had their heyday 30 years ago and so now they're going through revitalization, or they're sitting pretty nice and they're sort of perhaps doing different things. And so, you know, has anybody gone out and paved their roads? No, but that's not the kind of, well, this is the first time a community has been told to fix their roads. This is the first time I've ever seen it. And we've been in places that, you know, are pretty up in the thumb. I mean, there's some communities that they need paved roads, right? Believe me. So, yeah, I'll take one more and then.
I'm surprised that we didn't hear anything about, or any suggestions about what to have like in our plaza to help attract. And then I missed it. Souvenir shop.
Yeah,
I mean,
like coffee shops.
Or commenting about placement of some of the stores. Like one of the prime places, I'm sorry if the laundromat guy is here, but I mean, you know, the laundromat has like the best place.
Well, there was a comment about Cargill, but what's, you know, like, are you really, you know, those of us that see that, we recognize the importance Cargill plays in providing jobs for the community. But like private industry can pack up shop at any point. The mines can run dry, you know. I'm sure they know when that might happen if it does. And that piece of property, those of us with a visionary could see that property being something that could house work, you know, people, co-work, shared space, apartments on the river. You know it. It's already happening here with, you know, the new development. So, but I don't, you know, the youth said a souvenir shop, but is that a Silver Bullet, a coffee shop? You've got Simply Fresh. That's been there. If, you know, a couple different.
Gonna have a Starbucks.
Yeah, we encourage more local, you know, businesses, you know, but so I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if we have like the silver bullet on that. You probably had a kayak business at one time, and it's really hard to sustain those types of things. You know, we've had them in Port Huron, and they've opened up for a couple of years, and we're a seasonal state. It's really hard, right, to keep that stuff afloat, and we all depend on summer significantly. So I got to stop there. We are going way over the city.
Very good job.
Well, we're not done yet. We're not done yet, but thanks for your comment. So we've blasted through this, and you know, this is up now to the city of St. Clair as to what they intend to do. I'm going to let just Therese say a word or two. You want me to show the slide too of that?
Yes. Well, as far as the community leadership team, we are receiving the information same as you right now. So I know we talked about we definitely wanted to share this with you. So I think the city and the chamber would be the primary locations for that. So we'll get this information out to you as soon as we can. And I wanted to take this opportunity just to announce we have a community visioning workshop October 3rd from 5:30 to 7:30 at the St. Clair City Hall for our City of St. Clair Master Plan. So that will be addressing a lot of the opportunities for development and improvements to our city. And this is pretty timely too. We have a St. Clair Bike Committee meeting next Thursday, the 26th, 6:30 at City Hall. And really to talk about that Bridge to Bay connection. And we don't have a committee we want people to come in and join us for that community. So we have those meetings going on. And I want to thank Andy and the MSU Extension Service for working with us. And I think this is what we wanted.
Great.
To get this input from the first time users.